Welcome to another edition of Living with Purpose. Today I have a dear friend and colleague, Kevin Espirito, who is an entrepreneur, he's a technologist, he's a humanist, a philanthropist, somebody deeply concerned about the community, and has had global experience in showing up where there is need. Kevin and I were colleagues. We worked together at Microsoft, and Kevin led the employee giving campaign. So please join me in welcoming Kevin. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you, Akhtar, and it's great to be here.
So let's start off with your journey, Kevin. Talk a little bit about your growing up, where were you born, family, and then what brought you to Microsoft?
Sure. Yeah. We we're very poor. I always had joy and happiness, never really knew that we were as poor as we were until a little later in life. But looking back on it, I mean, we were in a shelter for some time, and that was during grade school. And I've had conversations with my brother now, and I think he was a little bit more embarrassed, at the time. He was 2 years older than I was. I didn't really think anything of it. I was always happy. But I see how that's shaped me and shaped my bent on social justice and just care. We were that family that was held up, in church that was the family in need. And we would get boxes and hand-me-downs and clothes and whatnot. For me, it was great. They were all new to me. So we would throw some patches on the pants, and I had a new pair of pants to go to school in.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Spokane. I was born in Seattle, Washington, grew up in Spokane, Washington. Very lucky. My mom got a job at a local Catholic school, and so we got our tuition paid for. So we went to Catholic school for grade school, at least. And I think spiritually, after that, I was shaped by many, many different religions growing up, because after we moved away from that part of town and started going to a public school, anyone that knocked on the door at the time, my mom would let them in, and then we would start going to that church. So we grew up Catholic through fifth grade. Then there was a time that we were Mormon for a few years. We went to the Mormon church. We went to a non-denominational church, Jehovah's Witness, for about a year. I would always go, and of course, growing up, it was always boring. But for me, it kind of shaped my spirituality of taking the things that I liked the most from each religion. And what I've found is at the top, at the highest level of all religions, it's really about love.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the unifying factor of all religions has been bringing people together through love, cherishment.
Yeah, and connection.
And connection. Unfortunately, in today's world, it's also used to divide us.
Of course.
And that's I guess, part of being human. Part of being human, yes. Right? As much as we like to love and cherish each other, we also like to dislike and hate each other. So you grew up in Eastern Washington, just so that some of our listeners will not know where Spokane is. It's part of the eastern part of the state, very much surrounded by the agricultural community.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of grew up there. Where did you go to college?
After high school, went to University of Washington, came back
to where you had grown up.
Back to Seattle, and I was not ready. I told my mom at the end of high school I was just not ready. I needed to go see the world, and went anyways. And I excelled at absolutely all parts of college life except academics. I was I had fun, and that's the reason I was there. And it didn't last long, of course, but that was a lot of fun. And I just needed to grow up. I needed to get out and see the world. I actually took an emergency student loan and went to Europe for the first time. I think I learned more in that trip than probably that first year, albeit I didn't go to class much that year. But I actually love to learn, and I think I just had to grow up.
So you went to Europe, and this was what, 17, 18?
I was 18. Yeah, 18 at the time, and absolutely loved it. We were there for a month. and got a Eurail pass. At that time, of course, there were different currencies. So every country we went to, we took traveler's checks. I mean, this was way back this would have been 92. And yeah, changing the currencies at each country. Eurail pass, we had, I think, 21 days that we could jump on. And I sold my car and got an emergency student loan to pay for the trip. So we were definitely on a budget. It woke my desire to see the world and understanding that there are some pretty cool places out there.
And who were you traveling with, since you said we?
I tagged along with a friend of mine from high school. He was going over to see his brother that was stationed in the army over in Germany. And then we made a trip out of it.
So you come back, and what were you studying at UW? And what happens afterwards?
Well, at that time, I wanted to be a teacher. I loved kids. I wanted to teach. I thought that grade school was where I wanted to be. And so I came back and I started to work at an elementary school in Issaquah. And it was a 3rd, 4th grade split as an instructional aide. And it was fantastic. It was amazing. It was what I was hoping that it could be. At the same time, I was looking at, wow, I can't even pay the bills. And ended up getting a job at a hotel as a doorman downtown Seattle. I made twice as much as a doorman than I was making as an instructional aide, and realized I was actually making more than a starting teacher would. So I thought, well, I guess I don't have to make it a career. I can, I started coaching hockey at the same time and thought, you know what, there's other outlets that I can stay engaged with youth, and I don't need to make a career out of it.
It's a sad story, right? That, I mean, we value our teachers so poorly, not willing to invest in them.
Yeah.
And then society basically thinks that, they only work 9 months a year.
Yeah, of course.
Which is not true, because they do preparatory work before coming back into school. So here you are working in downtown Seattle, doorman. And then did you go back to school? Did you get additional training? How do you then land up from there to Microsoft?
So I was working full time. I had actually a couple jobs. I was valet parking cars at the Metropolitan. I was working full time as a doorman at the Westin and going to school. I went back to Seattle Central and got an AA degree at the time. And that's when I realized I really did love to learn. It was just a kind of a timing issue before. But at that time, this was 94, 95. So I discovered computers, and I couldn't afford one, of course, because back then, just a regular computer that wouldn't even do much was $3,500, $3,600.
Yeah.
So I saved up tips and ended up with a friend of mine, bought all the components and put my first computer together. And that led into, he showed me SQL Server. And for some reason, it just completely made sense to me. And SQL Server, database language that you can kind of go into large data sets and pull information out that you're looking for. And that's actually how I landed my first job at Microsoft, was self-taught, and then getting a job with a company that was pulling database reports. And I still had the job at the Westin, and it was really good money. So I was there for a while, living in downtown Seattle. But the first job I had was as a temporary employee in the OEM division as a database report writer at Microsoft. And then moved in full time. That was 99, I guess, is when I finally did that. But I was on campus during the 1995, the Windows 95 event. I was parking cars as part of the valet parking. I was where I believe it was building 25, but it was just an empty lot, and I was parking employee cars. I like to say I was there for Windows 95.
There you go.
But I also met Steve Ballmer and met Bill Gates while at the Westin. While
parking cars. Oh, opening doors for them.
Opening doors. Yeah, for sure.
Did you get your full-time job at the OEM division?
Yeah, I did. At the time, it was a tool that would take the marketing databases. There were over 30 marketing databases around the company at the time. And we needed to sync those up with our sales databases to basically say, if we ran $1 million marketing campaign to system builders, were we actually selling those system builders more bootable operating systems or more operating systems? And so that's the job that I got hired into, is helping that team. And that became how the sales folks within System Builder Group, within the partner group, was getting their sales commissions. So it became a very important tool to the sales folks. And I ended up traveling the world and training on that system in the different areas of the world. It was kind of a wild ride, for sure.
And then from there, you decide that you wanted to not do any of this and come into the community affairs, which is now the philanthropy team, to run the employee giving campaign. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of talk what you're doing now.
Well, I'm not sure if your listeners know about the giving campaign, but at Microsoft, once a year, the whole campus really turns into a fundraiser for thousands of nonprofits. And the way that that's done is each group or each vice president appoints someone to help that group raise money and figure out what they're going to do. And all of that rolls up into the philanthropies group to manage. And so I started out my very first year helping the VP appointed lead. And my manager told me about the giving campaign one-on-one. And that was kind of my introduction to philanthropy at Microsoft, and understanding of what it meant in the community and what it meant to employees. So I just continued to each year give back, volunteer. And then it was 2009 is when I applied, of course, and to become a loan executive, which leads the job for 3 months, goes into philanthropies group and helps with the campaign. Following that, the position opened up and I applied for it.
Just again, for our listeners, it happens in the month of October. Of course, employees can give at any time during the year, but October is reserved as a month where everybody can go solicit anybody else, their colleagues, their class, group mates, anybody. Nonprofit organizations come onto campus to solicit for funding, and it's really one big gala that happens. It's like a party. But Kevin was responsible for running that when I was running Microsoft's corporate philanthropy at that time. And there were a couple of things that you did, right? While you were there, you made a couple of changes to the employee giving campaign. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of transition off to what you're doing now.
I think when I came on, there was one main thing. I looked at it not just as employee engagement, but I wanted to look at it from the full spectrum. So from the time maybe an intern comes on board all the way through after an employee transitions out of employment with Microsoft and becomes an alumni. So when I was in role, we added on benefits for the interns, and I gave them matching gift benefits. So the employee matching gift benefit is dollar for dollar matching to whatever the employee wants to give to whatever nonprofit, up to $15,000 a year. And for interns, I think we had 1,000 or 2,000 that they could get matched up to. But it was an introduction, so we were able to give that. And then also started discussions around how we could integrate alumni back into some of the fun events that we do, and some of the giving and community engagement. So I really enjoyed that. And then outside of that, we crossed the $1 billion mark, 30 years of giving at Microsoft. some big milestones during that 2012 year. Yeah.
And then you also got the volunteer match.
Volunteer match.
Volunteer at that time could actually get that time matched with money
Yes.
going to the nonprofit organizations. It was not just cash to cash match, but it was also time to cash match.
Yeah, $25 an hour. I think it started at $17 an hour and then got raised up. We raised it up with, I think, Lisa Brummel at the time. I am just blown away looking at the numbers today. We crossed, I think we had 118 million a year. So they are double that today. Every year they're $250 million. It's just phenomenal. Just keeps growing.
So you had this wonderful work that you were doing, and then at some point you decided that you wanted to leave this because you decided that you wanted to go spend some time in Vietnam and do some work there. So talk a little bit about that, and then what you're doing today with Webloom.
Obviously, Beth, my wife, she went to Nicaragua, and from that experience, we started talking about what that meant and what could we actually do. And we weren't naive enough to think we could go change the world in that way. But there was a change in her that happened that she couldn't ignore. And so after about a year of conversations, we decided that we were lucky enough that we could do this and we could go and be with another culture, be as other, and live in Vietnam, live with the worry. And at the time, I was on the board of directors for Peace Trees Vietnam. And the worry, living with the worry, is there's a lot of still unexploded ordnance in the ground there that take lives and maim people. So we weren't going over blind. We were going over just to live with and be with. And that actually turned into a program when people found out we were going to live. It turned into an ask of us to start a drowning prevention program called Swim for Life. And that program is still going, wildly successful today. And that's what we did for the 2 years that we were there.
And why was drowning and swimming so important? Because one would think that Vietnam, coastal country, people know how to swim.
Well, you think about Vietnam from north to south is about the same as California, north to south, but it's very skinny. And so the coastal area, of course, is very long. They also have rivers and streams and rice paddies, and there's a lot of flooding that happens. So the dangers are definitely there. When I was asked this a lot when we were there is, why don't they know how to swim? Water's all around. And if you look at the US, we had similar issues at the turn of the century. And it wasn't until 1914 that the American Red Cross developed the water safety, lifeguarding systems, and training for swimming, etc., water safety instructors. So it's taken us 100 years plus to get to where we are with that infrastructure. They just don't have that infrastructure, the pools, the lifeguards, the system, the training, etc. So that's what we were there to start.
And so you were there for a couple of years, and then you came back and decided to start with Beth, who is also on the podcast that has talked about Webloom. But give me your sense of Webloom and what you are doing and how you are marrying that plus shelter and housing. Talk a little bit about your journey and where you are today.
So Beth's academic background and professional background was in counseling and mental health. And so when we got back, she really wanted to explore mental health, what was happening in central Indiana, and where were there gaps. With Webloom, we really saw international development and wanted to make sure that or the one thing we saw so clearly were that in any community, there are leaders that know what's best for that community. And they might just need access to opportunities or access to resources. So with that in mind, Beth started her journey on mental health, and that led into what's being run now as the recovery cafes in Indiana. And for me, housing obviously is a very personal
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so as she was getting that started, she introduced me to an organization called Oxford House. And that is what they believe in is recovery housing, democratically run. And it's a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And I went out and I toured some houses, and what I saw really broke my heart. What I saw people living in were really slums. They were houses that the running water might be on, might not be working. There were bed bugs. There were 6 people in bunk beds to a room, all paying weekly. People coming out of incarceration, and this was their only option. And I just thought there could be better. So we invested in our first house, and that was 2019. And now I think we're up to 20 or 21 in Indiana. And how these houses work, there's hope and dignity in place in these houses. It's they have rules to make sure there's no more than 2 people per room. You can't walk through a room to get to a bathroom. There's rules that just bring dignity back. And these houses are absolutely gorgeous. They're beautiful. And people can stay as long as they want. They're paying weekly. They're paying to the organization. And what I loved about it is they're all democratically run. And rather than us as the investor pulling all the money out, these folks pay a normal rent, and all of the extra money stays with that house, and they get to decide what to do with it. And they're all supporting one another in recovery. So I like the model. We ended up continuing our investment. And yeah, even today we're looking at possibly a few more.
So are you running this on your own, or is this an organization that runs it, or you created a different organization to run it?
No, this is an organization called Oxford House. So they've been around for the last 40 years or so.
Right.
And that's who I got introduced to that model. So we were just investing in that model. It kind of comes full circle with what we're doing with Webloom and what we're doing on the peer recovery side. This housing we find in everywhere we go and help open up a new recovery cafe. Housing is the number one issue.
Yeah, I mean, housing is a huge issue for anybody that is actually trying to get themselves reintegrated back into society, whether it is people that are out on the street, people that are being just released from prison, or people that are going through a recovery program. Without stable housing, it just becomes impossible, especially in this country, to get back on your feet. And the whole issue of dignity is so important. So as we come to our close, Kevin, talk a little bit about purpose, the importance of purpose for you. How are you showing up with purpose?
Yeah, I think it's such a deep topic because it's so faceted and there's so many parts to it. I look back and reflect and think about how many times I have reinvented myself or built up an ego around something, and how it's either been torn down or I've started over. And I realize there's so much energy that goes into portraying something outwardly. And a lot of that was me trying to find what I felt was missing. So you can get material things. You think you're going to be happy at a certain level, and you get there and there's still that thing that's missing. And so for me, I think tearing down the ego and really looking inward to say, who am, if I'm not that, who am I? And I've realized that I've been here all along. I just, through my upbringing, through any traumas, I've created something where I tell myself I'll never do this or I'll always do this. And that's become who I thought I was. But if I really look at it, who I am is the person before I've decided that.
Right.
And so more recently in the past few years, have decided that my purpose will be whatever interactions I have, whatever conversations, if I'm acting and being from my truest, most authentic self. And that, I think, is my life journey, is to look back and say, when I have a reaction to something, say, why am I reacting that way? What decision did I make earlier on in life has caused that reaction? And then if I'm aware of that, I'm able to, one, not have the reaction, two, choose differently. And I think all of those choices will undo a lot of, I guess, who I've built myself up to be. And if I can tear all those down and just be my authentic self, then my purpose is going to shine through.
Yeah, it's such a great message in terms of how all of us have to discover our authentic self and really become comfortable within our own skin and our own mind. So, Kevin, that's such a great way to kind of talk about the importance of purpose. So let's end with your one golden nugget, a piece of wisdom that you want to share with our listeners.
Well, I thought about this, and actually a friend just texted a thank you, and it brought this up just today. So I wanted to share. It's from the prophet, Khalil Gibran, the prophet.
Yeah.
From the 30s. The quote is, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." And I just love that, because it just puts it into such perspective that all the possessions in the world are not going to fill that void. But getting to your true authentic self will more than fill that. And now you're able to give that light to others.
You know, Khalil Gibran has got some amazing quotes, and the book, The Prophet, is such a important read. So, Kevin, thank you so very much for being on the podcast. Again, to our listeners, purpose is that renewable source of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. Purpose is not something that you discover overnight. It's a journey. It's always a lifetime journey. It will continuously evolve and change. But again, show up with your strengths, show up with your value, be authentic. Thank you all very much for listening. And thank you, Kevin, for being part of this journey.
Thanks, Akhtar. The pleasure was all mine.